You want a 3D printer that actually works day to day, not just a list of eye-catching specs, right? You're looking for something you can trust to print reliably, that won't eat up your weekend with constant tinkering, and that feels like a solid investment instead of a flashy toy. I get that hesitation. There are a lot of printers that promise industrial-grade speed but end up delivering mist layers or endless filament jams. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll walk through what the FLASHFORGE Creator 5 really delivers once you pull it out of the box, who will actually benefit from its Toolhead design, and where the trade-offs lie. First, let's talk about the category. Desktop FDM printers have moved beyond just a single extruder for a while now. The things that matter most to most users are how much hassle the machine adds to the workflow, how consistent the first layer sticks, how easy it is to change filaments or colors, and whether the printer can keep a stable temperature long enough for bigger parts. Speed is nice, but only if you can actually use it without sacrificing surface quality. And for anyone who has tried to print in multiple materials, the biggest pain point is the purge waste. Every time you switch from PLA to TPU, you end up spewing a few centimeters of filament that you never intended to use. Those hidden costs add up. The Creator 5 tries to solve those pain points with a Toolhead carousel and an automatic offset calibration routine. In practice, the carousel means you can load up to 4 different filaments, say, a matte white PLA, a flexible TPU, a carbon-filled nylon, and a water-soluble PVA support, then let the printer handle the swapping. The auto-calibration takes the guesswork out of aligning each nozzle to the same XYZ plane, which is something I've seen cause headaches on other multi-extruder rigs. When you start a print that uses 2 materials, the firmware automatically shifts to the correct nozzle and adjusts the extrusion distance so you don't have to manually tweak offsets in the slicer. For a maker who wants to produce functional prototypes with built-in hinges, flexible TPU, and soluble supports, PVA, that workflow can cut setup time from half an hour to just a few minutes. Speed is the next headline. The specs brag about 600 millimeters per second, but the reality is a bit more nuanced. When you push the printer to those velocities, you need to make sure your model isn't overly intricate. Highly detailed sculptures can start showing ringing artifacts because the motion system is working at its limits. In my own test runs with a 150 mm cube, printing at 300 mm per second shaved off roughly 40% of the build time compared with a more conservative 100 mm per second, and the surface finish was still acceptable for functional parts. So the speed advantage shines when you're printing larger, less detailed objects. Think enclosures, brackets, or basic aesthetic shells. If you need ultrafine resolution, you'll probably dial the speed back anyway. The 256 mm cube build volume is generous for a desktop machine. It fits most tabletop projects and even allows you to print 2 smaller parts in one go, which is a nice productivity boost. However, the open frame design means you lose a bit of thermal stability, especially on cold days or in a drafty workshop. I noticed that prints with ABS or nylon sometimes required a makeshift enclosure, just a simple acrylic box to keep the ambient temperature steady and avoid warping. That isn't a deal breaker, but it does add a small extra cost and a step you need to remember. Now for the hidden trade-offs. The carousel mechanism is mechanically clever, but it introduces a few extra moving parts that can wear over time. If you're printing non-stop, you might find the Toolhead swapping motor needing occasional lubrication after a few hundred cycles. That's not a massive maintenance task, but it's something a beginner should be aware of. Also, the auto-calibration works well when the printer is on a level surface and the bed is clean. Any dust or debris on the calibration pins can throw off the offset and cause the first few layers to be slightly misaligned. A quick wipe before each session solves it, but it adds a tiny habit you have to build. Another practical point is filament waste. The near-zero purge claim stems from the fact that the printer only extrudes a few millimeters of filament when switching nozzles, thanks to the precise nozzle positioning and the short purge tower built into the slicer profile. In real life, that translates to maybe a gram or 2 of filament per material change, which is a noticeable saving if you're working with expensive specialty filaments. If you're only ever using one material, you won't see that benefit, but you also won't be penalized. There's no extra hardware you have to maintain. Who should buy this? If you're an experienced hobbyist or a small prototyping shop that regularly needs multiple materials in a single print, the Creator 5 offers a genuine workflow upgrade. The ability to load for fill.